Thanks for joining me on episode 847 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hi, I'm Dan Miller from 48days.com. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to find the work you love is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater.
If you've ever had a conversation with someone where both of you were in the room and heard a conversation or participated in a conversation, and yet a couple of days later, when you talk about it, you have completely different perceptions and completely different recollections of what was said. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's Spiritual Foundation episode about developing your influence, I talk with you about Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. I share how the focus on love first helps clarify our decisions, and I also share how this isn't the same as saying that everything is relative. Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10 says, "Owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet, and any other commandment are summed up in these words. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is fulfilling of the law." You know, that's one of those passages that I just love how it brings clarity to what it means to love your neighbor. It's not about, quote, following the rules. It's not about thinking through, if I don't do this rule and I don't break this rule and I don't break this rule, then everything will be okay in my life. Instead, it's about focusing first on the other person, focusing first on what they need, focusing on how they feel, how they see the world. And when you put that other focused into place, it begins to help clarify all of your decision making. And by the way, one of the biggest secrets to this is recognizing that you probably don't actually know how other people feel. We make assumptions about how other people feel. We make assumptions about how other people see the world. But unless we've asked them and received an honest answer, we never really know. And because many of us go through life without really understanding how we feel day to day, it ends up causing problems for us as well. Because when someone asks us, how did that make us feel? We generally don't have a good answer because we've never reflected on what we like, what we don't like, what our feelings are. Instead, we've gone through life just going day to day. And that happens to a lot of us. When it comes to making a decision that is truly the best for someone else and doing that first, it's harder than we think. But a lot of it requires actually building relationship with others, focusing on understanding others, asking them questions, getting to know them, because only out of relation can an understanding of what they need and what they want come into being. And the reason why I talk about this not being the same as relativism, this isn't an anything goes attitude. This isn't about just doing what makes others feel good or what makes you feel good. This isn't about going through life and there is no truth and nothing matters because everything is relative. But instead, it's recognizing the fact that when we view the world, we, to some extent, create our own reality because it's through our judgment, through our thinking, through our understanding of what we see and what we feel that we create the reality. If you've ever had a conversation with someone where both of you were in the room and heard a conversation or participated in a conversation, and yet a couple of days later, when you talk about it, you have completely different perceptions and completely different recollections of what was said. And you have to be open to the idea that the probability is that neither of you remembers it 100% accurate. Because the truth is, the way we are designed, our memories are not like a videotape recorder or a tape recorder. We don't remember everything perfectly. And when that comes to being, we have to recognize the ability to know that we could be wrong. That's one of the fundamental tenets of creating a loving relationship, is recognizing that your perception of reality and reality are not always the same thing. And out of that, we begin to ask the questions that allow us to, quote, follow the rules, but not because we're just following the rules, but because it truly is a way of showing caring and love for our neighbor. Thanks for listening. Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor. Go over to facebook.com/inspired stewardship and like our Facebook page and mark it that you'd like to get notifications from us so that we can connect with you on Facebook and make sure that we're serving you to the best of our abilities with time and tips there. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.